The warp is a hellish nightmare in which few mortals can hope to survive. In the realm beyond reality dwell the Chaos Gods and their immortal servants, the Daemons. The gods themselves are ancient beyond measure and have been at war with one another ever since their birth in a battle known as the Great Game. Each of them has carved out realms, kingdoms within the warp that reflect their natures, aspirations and powers. Today, we'll be going through the Chaos Gods in depth, exploring their domains and the warp itself in as much depth as human sanity allows us to dare. My name is Michael for Tactica Imperialis, and welcome to 40k Stories. The warp is, to put a long story short, impossible. Seriously, the place took the laws of physics and decided to give them the middle finger, and that's putting it lightly. As a result, the complete unreality of the Immaterium means that any ships travelling through the warp have to carry a bubble of reality in with them, lest they be destroyed or overrun by demons. This, I assume, is the Geller field used by Imperial ships. Nothing within the warp truly exists, in either the material realm or the Immaterium itself. Even demons, who appear to have a physical body when they manifest, are simply composed of warp energy given form. It's said that a demon looks different in the eye of every beholder, as their form is determined by the perception of the person looking at the demon, though the demons who serve a single god do have many design similarities with each other to denote their allegiance. The geography of the warp is also a load of nonsense. There isn't a true one-size-fits-all map of the warp, so it's easier to explain what is there than bother with notions of size, shape, location, or anything else we think of to describe things. The areas where a Chaos God holds sway is the realm of that god, and we'll be exploring them in greater depth later. Everywhere else is known as the Formless Wastes, a place of complete randomness. It houses every dream or nightmare, fantasy or vision, as well as the demons not aligned to the Chaos Gods. These are the Furies, bestial and barely sentient winged demons spawned from indecision or sheer chance. Some extremely powerful demon princes or greater demons also carve themselves a small empire within the wastes, separate from those of the gods they align to. They are petty irrelevancies compared to the realms of the gods, but they demonstrate that the demon has gained a level of control over the warp that almost nothing else could hope to attain. The Chaos Gods were birthed as reflections of the emotions of the soul-bearing races, particularly those with a higher psychic potential, such as humanity or the Eldar. This is true for the entire warp, as in the early stages of the Immaterium's life, these emotions flowed through the warp, before eventually coalescing to form the Chaos Gods. The emotions of those races and others, the thoughts and feelings never shared openly or even consciously, noticed turned from thought to reality within the warp. Given the general state of the universe, even for millennia before humanity evolved, it is perhaps little surprise that the overriding emotions were generally negative: rage, deviousness, pain, suffering. That is not to say that the Chaos Gods are comprised entirely of negative emotions, for even the smallest amounts of positivity will affect the most fitting god: honor, joy, inspiration, hope. Whilst it is theoretically possible that every single variant emotion had a different god associated with it, over time, 4 entities rose to become the mightiest of the Chaos Gods, possibly encompassing any lesser ones in the process, so as to avoid further distraction in the great game that was to come. Demons did not exist until after the Chaos Gods had coalesced into being, possibly with the exception of the Furies, as they were not created by the Chaos Gods. Whilst all demons technically do not exist within the warp, well, they have no physical presence anyway, so close enough. They are formed when a Chaos God chooses to impart a small portion of its power into a new being, even though a demon isn't quite made of the same stuff as a god, due to being able to manifest in the physical realm whilst the gods cannot. Demons are also immortal. If they are slain in the material realm, their essence will simply reform within the warp, albeit with their honor extremely dented and their chance to manifest lost for a long period of time. The only way to truly kill a demon is for the god who created it to recall the power it used to create the demon in the first place. Frankly, this is the only thing that keeps some demons loyal to the gods, as they basically hold the guillotine over the head of every demon they create, be they a basic lesser demon or a mighty Primarch. And you thought from my last theory that being ascended to demonhood was the end of your eternal servitude. The Furies are seemingly an exception. As I said earlier, they weren't created by the gods themselves, but their lack of awareness or intelligence means that any risk caused by them is basically negligible or non-existent. The Great Game is the name for the eternal warring of the Chaos Gods, where the infernal legions of demons march to claim territory for their respective gods. Through the actions of mortals, the gods gain power to continue their wars and dominate one another. The one thing I must stress is that although the gods seek to destroy one another and win the Great Game, to do so would leave the warp lifeless and very boring. As a result, the Great Game is endless. If a single god rises to dominance for a time, the other three will temporarily ally themselves together in order to tip the scales back to equilibrium before betraying each other and warring anew. For example, Tzeentch's staff. The Great Game does have timeouts, for if a massive event in the material universe takes place, or is planned to take place, then the gods may well put aside their differences in order to deal with it. A good example of this is the Horus Heresy following the rise of the Emperor, or the 13th Black Crusade, which is currently ongoing. Once the situation is resolved, or the gods have played whatever role they deem sufficient to their needs, the Great Game will pick up from roughly where it left off. The battle lines may have changed if a certain god was empowered as a result of the timeout event. So, that's the warp itself, the gods, Daemons, and the Great Game all loosely established. Now it's time to crank the insanity meter up to 15 and delve into the realms of each individual god. We'll start with Slaanesh, the Dark Prince to humanity, she who thirsts to the Eldar. This gender-defying entity is the youngest of all the Chaos Gods according to those in the material universe. However, given that the warp gives the middle finger to the laws of physics as we mentioned earlier, Slaanesh has both always existed and yet never existed in the eyes of the other gods. Slaanesh leaves its door much wider than the others, inviting those poor souls who end up in the warp into the Palace of Pleasure. The realm of Slaanesh is made up of 6 concentric circles, for 6 is the sacred number of she who thirsts, and passing through those 6 rings will grant the visitor access to the palace. Unfortunately, only a single soul has ever made it that far, a knight of the Adeptus Astartes in silvered armour with a rune-etched sword. His name and identity is unknown, but he managed to force his way through the Dark Prince's realm with his indomitable will to get an audience with Slaanesh and attempt to kill him, her, it, whatever. But he failed, doubt entering his mind for only the most fleeting of moments and damning him to serving Slaanesh for all eternity as he knelt before the god. It is often thought this individual was a Grey Knight, perhaps even a former Supreme Grand Master, but there is no concrete proof in the lore as to who he was. If you ever feel like trying to go one better, the rings are as follows. The outer ring embodies greed, a realm of riches beyond desire. Touch so much as a single coin, however, and you will be left hopelessly trying to count them for the rest of eternity. The second ring is for gluttony, vast feasts laid out for you to gorge to your heart's discontent, as once you begin, you will never be able to stop until your body has burst, no matter the agony you suffer in the process. The third is for lust, as you will be accosted by impossibly beautiful individuals whispering sweet nothings and promising your darkest desires. But be warned, for these are all Slaaneshi demons, and beneath your feet lie the limbs and decapitated heads of those who gave in to their lust. So kill them, or at the least ignore them, and move on. The fourth is for glory and power, as you will be presented with dominance over armies or groups beyond your imagination in size and might. But do not speak to them, for you will be consumed by an eternal paranoia of betrayal and unable to leave. The penultimate ring is for vanity, as you will be shown and reminded of all the glories of your past life. But be humble. Do not stop to reflect, lest you become frozen there forevermore, staring intently as the forests and thorns consume your body. The final ring is for sloth, an idyllic beach and an overwhelming sense of fatigue calling you to rest. If you stop, though, you shall never wake again, drawn to sleep in an eternal coma as your body becomes one with the sand. If you have enough will to survive that, you had better hope you do not doubt yourself as you go to strike down the impossibly beautiful and beguiling form of Slaanesh itself within the Palace of Pleasure. Good luck to you. Feel free to have a go, but we must bid the Dark Prince adieu and continue on. Ah, the Garden of Nergal. Despite being the abode of the god of decay, the garden is perhaps the most vibrant place in all of the warp, abuzz with activity from the innumerable flora and fauna as they corrupt all around them. Nergal is by far the cheeriest of the Chaos gods, for though his plagues bring death, they also bring countless new forms of life along with them. He likes things personal, which is good for his demons as they're able to manifest wherever a major plague breaks out. Demons use their incursions as a way to escape the warring of the great game as much as to cause ruin or havoc, so Nergal's demons are certainly grateful for the generosity of their master. I would give you the guided tour, but sadly Nergal doesn't receive guests, as a group of Eldar Farseers find out. If we could go in, you'd hear reeds chanting the names of countless plagues and the victims they claimed, beetles who were just a little too human-like in features, giant mushrooms spewing out spores, and much, much more. In the heart of the garden is Nergal's manse. Don't be fooled by the rotting wood, the ivy on the walls, or the rusted metals. This place is built to last. In there is Nergal himself, endlessly slaving away at his cauldron as he seeks to craft the perfect plague. Hosts of plague-bearers, his lesser demons, chanting the names of the diseases or Nurglings spawned as a byproduct. At least a dozen per rotation of Nergal's colossal ladle. Somewhere in there, you'd also find Isha, one of the fallen Eldar gods, and Nergal's eternal prisoner / house guest / love interest, depends on who you ask. If I recall correctly, she's often used as a guinea pig by the Lord of Decay, as she can seemingly heal anything. Those Farseers I mentioned before, they went to try and save her, but their souls wound up turning into trees from which Nurgling fruit grows. Torments Isha to no end, but Nergal enjoys a stroll through that new forest if he can ever drag himself away from the cauldron. Anyway, I think we've all caught an impossible amount of plagues just by looking at the place from an impossible distance away. So we should move on to our third realm, that of Korn. I hope none of you have anger issues, as we're coming up on Korns Fortress. With foundations made on murder and conflict, a chain of volcanoes that erupt daily, and parapets of brass granite and marble caked in blood, you know even at a glance that you're in the blood god's domain. Don't try and enter, for the flesh hounds wander the wasteland separating the mountains from the brass citadel, and they will kill you. If you're a warrior, your soul ends up somewhere in this fortress. Those who flee from battle are tortured beneath Korn's throne room, whilst those who died in their sleep toil within the forges that lie inside the volcanoes. Those who die in battle will end up with their bones littering the flesh-hound-stalked wasteland, though particularly murderous champions can actually fight for demonic power from Korn within the towering brass citadel. In there, Korn resides, with mountainous piles of skulls from every race in the galaxy's history under his titanic brass throne. There is also a pile off to one side for Khan the Betrayer's pile, which is pretty damn huge in itself. With his world-splitting sword at his side, capable of ripping into reality, Korn's creed is blood. Blood, blood, and more blood. So if you want his favour, kill everything and everyone, even your friends, because Korn cares not from whence the blood flows. It seems that non-humans can impress Korn too, as evidenced by Tactica the Demon Killer, a mighty orc warboss who got a massive kick from slaying demons who invaded his ship during a run through the warp. He then launched a crusade into the Eye of Terror and sufficiently murdered the flip out of everything they found until they landed on the planet controlled by one of Korn's favourite demon princes. They fought bravely, but were killed to the last orc. Don't ask how, but somehow Korn was bored enough to be watching the show, and so he resurrects the War when each new dawn comes, meaning that the demons kill them again, and again, and again, every single day for eternity. And so Korn was happy, and that demon prince was probably left wondering what he did to deserve having to kill the same enemies every day for eternity. Probably best not to ask. He'd kill you just for a change of pace. So that's Korn. Let's move on before the red mist descends on any more of us. I sincerely hope your sanity's still strong. Okay, physicists, look away now. Welcome to the Impossible Fortress, home of the Changer of Ways, Tzeentch. Or however you choose to pronounce it, it seems like everyone's got their opinion on that. This place is basically impossible to find. It's hidden within the Crystal Labyrinth. There are no defenders in the labyrinth, no guardians, for the goal is not to break your body, but rather your mind and soul. Rather than simply reflecting light as mirrors and other crystals do, the walls of the labyrinth reflect hopes and dreams back at you. And they don't stop there, as the labyrinth twists your dreams into nightmares and hopes into despair, all whilst constantly evolving, so as you never manage to escape and will instead wander the labyrinth with your dreams shattered and your hope consumed by despair. Don't worry though, you may well run across a few non-Tzeentchian demons who've become just as trapped as you. He's not very picky. The only people who have a hope of traversing the labyrinth are those who are considered by most of us as mentally insane, as their lunatic mind can see what most logical mortals cannot. And then there's the Impossible Fortress, which is so complicated and illogical that nothing can navigate it using logic or thought besides the greater demons of Tzeentch known as Lords of Change. In the Impossible Fortress, somewhere, is the Hidden Library, Tzeentch's inner sanctum where he plots, plans, schemes, counter-schemes, etc., etc. Also, the place is infinitely huge and so collapsing under its own density. Yeah, I told you it was impossible, didn't I? On top of that, the library is curated by pink and blue horrors, the weakest of Tzeentch's demons. The tomes within the library, perhaps unsurprisingly given their proximity to Tzeentch, will talk to and whisper to the horrors, trapping them within the library in webs of deceit. Presumably Tzeentch can still reclaim them, otherwise it would be an eternal drain on resources to have your own house destroy your demons. Then again, hard to know if he really cares. Anyway, my physicist brain is on the edge of exploding right now, so we need to go. Just a quick hop back over the formless waste. Well, I say quick, it could be here forever, or it could be less than a microsecond. And then we'll be back in reality. And we're back. So that was the warp and the realms of the chaos gods within it. A maddening, illogical and impossible place filled with demons and things that give the laws of science what for. As for the gods themselves, their domains range from brutal simplicity to utter chaos and everything in between. I hope you all enjoyed that excursion through the Immaterium. Nobody's head exploded, did it? Good. But we're back in the Imperium now. So I think it's only fair, after all those chaotic ramblings, we look at some Imperial heroes. We'll start off with a special knight that I was asked to talk about. One Nathaniel Garrow. My name is Michael for Tactica Imperialis, and I hope that you can join me next time. See you all again. Goodbye.